and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. As I've shown you these instruments all along, I've told you that they have 1 octave that they can play, or 2 octaves that they can play, and we've gone over the range of notes on the instruments. What I haven't done, and what I want to start with today, is where are those range of notes if you're looking at a keyboard. As you know, I'm a great believer in using keyboards when I teach, because you can see how notes relate to each other, you can see where octaves actually are, and it just gives you a better understanding of the music, and especially with the wind instruments, as some of them are limited in the amount of notes that they can play. So first off, I'm going to show you this little keyboard. I have 2 or 3 keyboards I'm going to show you today. I do all of my own charts and so forth, so this is middle C. Remember, I've said before that there is a note toward the middle of a piano. It's a little to the left of the middle, not exactly in the middle, but very close. And that note is called middle C. And all the notes that go down to the left can be considered to be bass notes. And all the notes that go to the right can be considered to be treble notes. And instruments can play a certain range, and I want to show you where they are. But first, let's look at the scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That is 1 octave. That C is right here. Middle C, and this is an octave higher. An octave is 8 notes. It's actually 7 notes, and the 8th note repeats the first. So that's the first octave. This is the C, this is the C. Now we'll go up another octave. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's the high C. And the flutes will go another octave above that. Then you get to the left and you go down the scale, and I'm not going to deal with that, but I'll just tell you what the notes are. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. That's 1 octave down, and then starting with that C, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. That's the 2nd note down. So we have here 4 octaves, and this is the middle C. Well, when you're dealing with the little instruments, especially the wind instruments, where on this keyboard do they actually play? Now let me turn right now to some of the smaller instruments. This is a song flute. It has 1 octave. I'll play the octave. It has a fairly good tone. There is a tone hole in the back. That means it's going to play up a little higher than some instruments that do not have a tone hole. It's actually quite a nice sounding instrument. It only plays 1 octave. Where does it play? It goes from the middle C up to the C. That's where it plays. C to C, no higher. The disadvantage of teaching, if you're in a school system and you're teaching and the students have these little instruments, is that you can only get 1 octave. And we have right here the tonette, which also has a tone hole in the back. I've shown you this before. Does not have such a good tone, and it plays that 1 octave. So let me just get my fingers in place. That's the bass note. That's the 1 octave. Here again, it's that same octave, C to C. Now the flutophones, they're going to sound a little bit different. I have 2 of them. They all sound alike. You can get them in white with red trim or black with white trim. There is a tone hole in the back of them. They should pitch pretty much like the song flutes and the tonettes because of that, but they may be a little different. I think they may be a little pitch different because they are a larger instrument. So I'll just play this one. I'll play the black one, but it's going to sound exactly the same. They're also easy to play and a nice little instrument, nice little tone. I think if I had the choice of tonette or song flute or the other little instruments, I would choose the flutophone if I just had a choice of just those. What's good about the flutophones is that they have a better volume. Okay, so all of those instruments, the flutophones, the tonettes, the song flutes, and some of the ocarinas, which I didn't bring in today, from C to C, one full octave, and that's the range where it is. Just those, so middle C up to this C here. That's their total range. Now, a lot of school systems use a recorder, which would be my preference if I have a choice of any of these instruments. I mean, if I have a choice of just these, I'll pick the flutophone every time. But if I can go on to other instruments, such as the recorders, they're far superior in a lot of different ways because they supposedly get 2 octaves. Now, let me just show you on this keyboard about the octaves here. Starting at middle C and going up to the first octave and then going to the second octave. So you have a range of middle C, the first octave, and the second octave. Now, I don't play these last 2 or 3 notes on a recorder. It can be done, but it's hard to do and the tone isn't that great. I usually take it from the middle C to probably E or F. So let's say an octave and a half comes in good and clear. You might have trouble getting the highest notes, but technically, if you want to just be perfect about it, it does get a 2 octave range. In other words, all of these notes are playable. So let me just play for a moment the recorder. It has a tone hole in the back. The tone is much better. It's much more intense. You can play a tremendous amount of music on a recorder. I have arranged classical pieces on the recorder. They are a very nice instrument. Now, you do get other instruments that can play 1 or 2 octaves. This one here, it's just a little melody flute. I just picked it up at a store. It has no tone hole, but what is its range? It's not in pitch. It's just, it only cost me about $1.50. So, I mean, this is as good as it can do. It's not like it flubbed up or something. And even the lowest note, which is here, is a little bit higher pitched. And that's as much as it can do. Let me try this one. They're inexpensive. They're fun to play. They look nice, they have pretty colors, and some of them play fairly well, and some of them don't. This one here only has 6 keys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No tone hole in the back, so its range is even limited to less than an octave. That's it. That's all you can play on it. Now, you get into other instruments such as the penny whistle. The penny whistle has a 2 octave range and it can play a lot of music. I do a lot of solos on the penny whistles. It really has a 2 octave range, very brilliant, very brash sounding. But as I've told you before, when we've gone into instruments, what makes an instrument sound different than another instrument, even though they're playing the same note? Part of it is what they're made of, how they're shaped, what their shape is like in the inside, how much air you can get into them. There's a lot of variables, but this little guy can play a lot. And this one here is a little flute that sometimes you can get an extra octave, sometimes you can't. I've actually done solos on this one. It's a very inexpensive instrument. I call it a melody flute because it's not totally a recorder, but it's like a recorder. It's based on the same thing, and I only paid $2 for it. It plays in the key of E flat. It plays fairly well. And if I'm doing a solo, of course, I have to arrange music according to what this instrument can play and how it's going to sound well. And if you have an instrument like this that goes 2 octaves, technically this is supposed to go 2 octaves. I actually only play it for 1.5 octaves. But when you play something like this, you've got to remember that the top octave is going to be flat. You really can't get it in pitch in the higher octave. So what I usually do is I keep it on the lower octave and maybe bring it up a couple of notes above that octave. So we're talking once again here, we're talking here to here, 2 octaves. Although most of those instruments go to about 1.5 octaves or so. You can get them to an E and F. You really don't do well in playing the top notes. So you can see here the staff. You can see where the notes are on the staff, and I've labeled them, and where they are on the keyboard. So, and also when you're dealing with the fifes, you're getting the same kind of thing. This one is interesting. It's made out of water pipe. A friend of mine made it. And he said to me, Pat, take this to the beach. Take it wherever you want to. This will play anywhere. You can sit on it. You can get sand on it if you're on the beach. You can't kill it. Well, you really can't. But it's very, very hard to play. But it's made out of water pipe. And this one, which is very, very similar, and it's made out of metal, but it has a little raised area where you put your mouth, which makes it a little different than fifes, and you just put your hand and you blow across it. That's just a piece of metal. So people make instruments out of various things. Let me show you some more things about where instruments are and where they are arranged. Let me see. Let me just put this down over here. I have a range of notes, quite a few. I have middle C right here. Remember, I've said that middle C can be a bass note or it can be a treble note, which is why I put the stem on each side. And when you get C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, this is the first octave. And then you go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. This is the second octave. Those two are on the other chart. But then you go to another octave above there, and here's your C way up here. A flute can do that. Other instruments can't get that high. Notice the number of lines. These are all called ledger lines. So if I wanted to play a flute, the flute will go to the middle C. That's the lowest note that a flute can get. And it will go all the way up through to the high C. So you have your song flutes and your other simple instruments, tonettes and so forth, going up to this. This is your 1 octave range. That's what you can do for them. Then you get the recorders, penny whistles, and the sassoto flutes, which I didn't bring in today, but they can do it too, getting to another range. So you get the octaves. And then, this is really considered to be a high C for most instruments, the flute taking off and going up another octave. Now, why do I want to put this on a staff with all the lower notes so you can see the whole thing? I think it's important, and this is why I think it's important to use keyboards when you're teaching. You can see where these ranges are. You can see where they go. You can see where they match up. So here we have your middle C, and we have the song flutes and so forth. the recorders. And then I want to mention clarinets. I didn't bring clarinet in with me, but I want to mention clarinets. Clarinets are interesting. One of my favorite instruments, actually, because they do have a 2.5 octave range, but their range actually goes into the bass. So you have, say, starting about D, going all the way to the C, that's the upper range on a clarinet. But you can get lower on clarinet, and you can go down to about this note right here. So that's part of it you play in the bass clef. Part of it is in the treble clef, most of it in the treble clef, but you do get some bass clef notes. Well, it's impossible to write music for a clarinet and have two staffs and have notes on both of them and have the instrument bouncing back and forth to play a song. It would be incredibly difficult to read. It would require an incredible amount of space. So they don't do that. You may be able to play these bass notes, but the instrument itself, the clarinet, is a treble clef instrument. You play off the treble clef as you do all of the, almost all of the woodwinds. And so what you have to do is you add ledger lines and you play all of these notes as if they were treble clef notes. So we get down to middle C, which is going to be right here. It's going to be right here. It's got the line through it. It has one line through it, and it's below the staff. That's middle C. This is all the upper register. So far, so good. That's all in treble clef. You get down here, C, B, A, G, F, and E. They normally would be on the bass range, and you don't want them on the bass range because you're playing a treble instrument, so you use ledger lines. These little lines tell you how far down these notes really are. If you drew those lines all the way across, then you would have your bass and your treble combined, but you don't want that. It would be incredibly difficult to read, so you can't do that. Nobody ever does that. So you add lines. They're bass notes, but they're played as treble clef notes because you only have the treble clef and you're adding the ledger lines to make it possible to go down far, to get deeper and lower notes, but play it as if it's on the treble clef. Let me show you, just out of curiosity. Okay, these are ledger lines. It's actually for flute. But it doesn't make any difference. The notes are going to be the same whether you're playing flute or playing anything else, but the flute can get up here. So you start off, I'm only doing the notes above the staff. The staff is 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then anything that's above or below, you have to have what's called ledger lines to tell you what note it is. This is a C. 2 ledger lines, it's on the line. This is a D. 2 ledger lines, it's above the second ledger line. Then I put in this D sharp, E flat. Those are enharmonic notes, and they're accidentals, but you can see they're above, and you have here on the E, you have 3 ledger lines, and the E is on the third one. So let's just go to the E right here. No sharps, no flats. 3 ledger lines, it's on the third ledger line. F is 3 ledger lines, it's on top of that third one. So you use your spaces as well as your lines, and you just go from line to space to line to space. Then you have more enharmonics, which I put in here, F sharp and G flat, and you get here, when you get to the G, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 ledger lines. This G is 4 ledger lines, and the G is on the 4th one. Then you get your A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's above the 4th ledger line, and a B, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's the 5th ledger line up, and it's on the ledger line, and then you get the C. The C is an incredibly high note. It is the only C, I mean, it's the highest C you can get, and as far as I know of the woodwinds, only the flute can reach it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ledger lines, and the note is above it. Now, as you're playing, The pianos have a little symbol that they use, so when you get to a certain note, it gives you a symbol and you play it an octave up. I've never seen that done with woodwind instruments. I have seen it done with pianos, but for woodwind instruments, they just write the ledger lines, and you learn to, in your mind, recognize, well, if it's 2, it's going to be a D. If it's 3, it's going to be an F. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's got to be the high C. The flutes are incredible on high Cs, or on any high notes, they're incredible. I'm just going to play one. This is my little flute, my student model flute. I decided to bring it because some people say when they see it on TV or take pictures of it, it looks like my little black flute. It's not black, but it is a darker shade of silver than you usually get. So I brought it because I'm going to go into lacquering of instruments and the color of instruments. I'm going to make a special segment of that. But let me play the G in 3 octaves. See the difference, how high it can get. It can get very, very high. The flute is very good on high notes. So let me put these away. And you understand that instruments that are written in treble clef can play notes that ordinarily be on the bass clef, but you have to add the ledger lines to do so. Let me take this off, and I'm going to just show you on this side of this chart an amazing amount of notes. Middle C right here. That's a lot of notes. Now the piano goes down lower and higher, but this is not a piano. It's just staff lines for as many notes as I could squeeze in. Notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your high C. That's a C, and this is a C. This is middle C. Your song flutes and smaller instruments do 1 octave, and that octave is up to C. And then the recorders, and you have some sassutos and penny whistles going up to the next C, and so that's their range. And then the flutes going up to the high C here. And this, as I said before, is middle C. Flutes and piccolos go all the way up like that. I want to show you, kind of watching my time here. This is a keyboard. As I say, I make my own things. This is got quite a few of the notes. A piano normally has 88 notes. Here's your middle C right here, toward the middle. On an actual piano, as I said before, it's not exactly in the middle, but it's close. Then you get your first octave right here. This is where your tonettes and song flutes play on the keyboard, and you get your recorders going up to another set, so you've got your 2 octaves here. Then you've got your flute going all the way up here. The reason I think it's important to see this, and I've got this on another scale which I've put here, I think it's important when you're playing an instrument to be able to know the range not only of what you're playing, but where it appears on the keyboard, because the keyboard has all of the notes. I think it's important, and I'm going to take off on this next week because I'll have more time to do it. I'm going to start answering questions, but the thing to remember is it's important to understand not only what you're playing, but how it fits in with what anybody else is playing, how the instruments fit together, what the ranges are, and how they totally work together for an orchestra. It's important if you conduct, if you're writing music, if you join some kind of a musical group, in terms of general knowledge. So I'll probably be bringing this back next week. So I think that's all the time I have for now. Thank you for watching, and please join me next time.